go. Well, welcome to everybody. Have I got the right one? Should say expenses. So you'll be aware that there's quite a lot of sophisticated finance functions in the system, and mostly agencies just use payroll, where you can put in various adjustments. So if you're paying somebody a day rate of 75 quid or an hourly rate of a tenner, you can just shove a tenner in. The problem with that, of course, is you can't reclaim the VAT as you would be able to if somebody put in tickets for, well, I was going to say not subsistence or public transport, but there's VAT to be reclaimed on quite a few expenses. And obviously, it makes it difficult to have a separate line to be able to put through for non-taxed items in the payroll. So if you need to be able to claim expenses back, especially if you need to claim your VAT back, and with some agencies, this is a significant sum of money every year, then you need to have itemized expenses. And of course, in some jurisdictions, the rules on those expenses and the itemization is very strict indeed. So we're going to just take a look today at setting up expenses, how you allow expenses, VAT and other financial housekeeping. And we're going to have a look at some examples of setting expenses to be allowed on specific projects, not others, and see what then happens when we actually look at the app. As with all of these things, if you do anything to set up a financial mechanism in your company, you'll be aware that preparation is absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. So in the manual, and I have somewhere around here copies of the manuals to show you, they were in links on the, let's just go and get them. Just go and get this manual here. So you should have got an overview of expenses, which is like a little brochure which just runs through some of the functions. And you should have got a very old looking phone when we first did it. And you should also have a document here with all of these preparations and tips and techniques and definitions and all the stuff that you'd expect, what it integrates with and so on. So there's lots and lots of screenshots on this to remind you afterwards, and you'll have the video, of course, as well. So if I just minimize that now to get it out of the way. So without further ado, let's kick off with the demo on setting up expenses categories. I'll just take you through this screenshot and then we'll have a look at some live ones. Starting from the top here, you've got the name of the expenses items. So that could be train fares, it could be parking or whatever. And then underneath that, you've got a short name. And the reason that you have a short name for each item is because at some point you've got to fit it onto a portrait cell phone so that they're claiming expenses, which could be lined up in columns, for example. This is especially important in German-speaking countries. As you know, the rest of the world laughs at the size of the words. Presumably the Chinese laugh at us at the size of our words as well. So then you'd have a nominal code, and that will depend on your account system. You know, in Xero or Sage or whatever account system you use, you'll have a different nominal code for those items, so they go in the right pigeonholes in your finances. You can have different text colors. I think we just did this to show off, but sometimes it is quite useful to be able to look down lists and see which expenses are coming where. Then you've got finance notes. These are notes for your internal finance department to say things like, don't forget, train fares don't have VAT, or whatever it is that you need to put into your, we've allowed 4,000 characters, so you can have quite long expenses on what you do and don't accept, how to deal with VAT and whatever. And then there's also claimant guidance notes. So you can put as many notes as you like for your claimants, for your employees in the field, as to what they can claim and why and when. Then you can put in here whether or not it's active. So you can obviously disable types of expenses that are no longer allowed at all. Whether you're paying it, so it may be that you ask for certain figures, but they're not actually payable. And the classic is some agencies in some jurisdictions need to ask for the mileage of the car, but it's not a payable expense. They just want the mileage of the car before and after your business trips. Whether it shows up on the portal, obviously important. So you can see subsistence here. Where are we? does show up on the portal, but entertainment does not show up on the portal, which is a shame, a great shame these days in the tax laws. It used to be lovely to take people out. And then you can also tick a box to say whether a receipt is required. And clearly for a subsistence expense, accommodation, fares, a receipt is required. And the idea is that you would take a picture with your phone of that receipt, sitting on your lap on the bus on the way home from your event. You'd be taking a picture of your bus ticket and so on and so forth. And those show up where the claim is being approved in the office so that everybody can see the audit trail. Then there's a default allowance. Now, normally this is 0 because normally you would allow that allowance, as it were, at an event by event basis. So you may remember the last time when we introduced this subject, you can take a specific shift like the dog and duck door payroll on the 27th, and you can say the guy can have £10 for subsistence and £10 for parking for that very specific event. So that's this screen here. I think VAT code and order are pretty obvious, and you can see some of these attract T20. Fares, of course, do not, but subsistence might, and I believe it depends whether it's cold or hot in the UK, but if in your country it may be different. Then you can decide what happens. Now, there are 6 or 7 stages that you can build in to your expense approval process. So we allow you to have electronically submitted by the employee, electronically approved by the manager, and then hard copy submitted by the employee, hard copy approved by the manager, and then there's 2 levels of finance approval, as you would expect. One is I approve it, and the other is I've paid it. On the staff portal, of course, you have to be able to say what happens when. Now, the other bit of preparation you'll have seen is that you have to actually produce a template for your hard copies. So before you can actually create a hard copy of expenses, you need to be able to, and this could be internally or it could be externally on the portal, you need to set up that template with us and decide on how you want your expenses to look. And you have your address on the top and the employee's name and their NI number, let's say. It might be by event or by campaign, or you might want to put their expenses in by date. You need to work with us. It's clearly there's a lot of preparation to set up an expense system. And like many things in business these days, because of tax, the amount of money that is being dealt with is out of all proportion to the complexity of running the system. But hopefully we can take a lot of that complexity, a lot of the admin grunt work away from you. So when you get an expenses approval process, obviously that process will have various stages. A finance admin can skip straight from electronically signed to I'm going to pay. But in many companies, if they're large companies and your expenses are hundreds of thousands of pounds for your employees, then clearly you'd have a lot of pairs of eyes who would watch in a lot of different stages. And you'll see that when you get to certain stages, other stages are grayed out. So you would have to go backwards through the stages if something was discovered to be wrong. I'm going to go on to this in a moment because you can see here some numbers have gone red, and I'll explain what the red items are in a moment. It's probably at the time the person claimed it, you were allowed to claim 100 miles, but somebody's changed it. You can only claim 40 miles or something like that, and hence that's gone red now, but you can still approve it if you wish. So let's have a look at the demos now. So if I go on to the demos system, which I have left somewhere here in Chrome, the way that you get to setting up the expenses is you go into admin, drop downs admin, whereas many of the control items in the system are. Where's my drop downs admin gone? Probably behind here, which means I need to mess around with my PowerPoint system here. There we are. So let's go take that Chrome again. This is always the interesting thing compared with live demos. There we are. That just popped up behind my PowerPoint control. So in expenses settings, this is where you get to that screen, and you can, if you wish, have a go at this if you have bought the expenses module on your system and put in some notes, it's pretty easy to do. So these would be the notes here. So that the staff member says, please make sure all your receipts add up to the total for subsistence. There we go, for subsistence. I'm not even sure. That's why I'm not in accounts. So, and in here you could say make sure they only charge for sandwiches or whatever, which I'm not going to save. So that's how you set up. Don't forget that also in Dropdowns admin you have to have your VAT codes and your nominal codes. So in your Dropdowns admin, in nominal codes, you would have had to have those codes set up, and you can see we've got some codes set up here. And then in addition to that, in VAT, I can't quite see where it is at the moment, but somewhere around here there should be VAT codes. In the VAT codes, you'd have some VAT codes set up. So you might have 5% for this, 20% for that, and so on and so forth. So in some of the jurisdictions we work with, sales taxes are 5 or 6%. In the UK, it's 20% in most of Europe. So that's Dropdowns admin, that's how you set it up. Let's have a look at approving expenses now. So this is a screenshot of the same demo system. And if I go back to that, the expenses approval is diddling around here somewhere. If I can just find it, expenses, there we go. And as you can expect, it's a list of expenses which are sitting around ready to be approved. So it looks like we've got various different expenses at various different levels. And of course, we have an expenses history, which isn't very much because we haven't paid very many expenses on this demo system over the years. So if we look at this one here, it looks like there's a fair bit of money. This is the one I chose for the screenshot that you saw. And let me just take you through a few bits and pieces here, which are going to come up later in the slides. But while I've got this screen in front of me, I'm going to do the demo of those points one by one, because otherwise I'll be hunting around for this screen again. So the point number one is you've got the date for which the expenses are being approved for each item. And the way that it works on the app, which we're going to have a look at the moment, is you can make lots of little expenses items and then you put them together in an expenses submission. So you could do a whole week's worth of expenses item, save each one, and then put them together as one submission. And that way you can define there in head office that you would like people to submit their expenses, let's say every week or every month, but the person can be doing their expenses every day to keep them up to date. So it looks like this person did something on the 8th of the 5th and the 25th of the 5th, and there's an expenses submission here, which will have an expenses submission number. Turns out it's number 5, and so there's their list of expenses they're claiming for. And these categories will of course correspond to the categories that we saw in the categories that you allow them to have, that you allow them to set up. If I minimize this or just get this out of the way, what do I do first? That, and then that, probably, to bring it back up. There we go. So if I move that over there, then you can see a line. Whoops. Well, that was clever of me. Let me just show you where to find expenses again. There we go. Now go away. That's better. Right. So if I just move that over there, you can see the points on the slide, and you can see the expenses. So it looks like these ones have been submitted and they're now through to accounts. So this one's got a fair chunk of money on it, which is why I chose it as an illustration, and it's got some red things. Now, I'm guessing that this was probably 50 quid was allowed, and that on the 25th of the 5th, that this chap Dave probably claimed 36, and then somebody would have changed the rule to 30, and that's why it's red. It's over the amount that you're allowed to charge now. We're going to be looking at where you set those rules up in just a moment. because remember we made everything default to 0 in the overall categories. Same with these items here. Nevertheless, we have our totals, and you can see that they've been electronically signed by the employee. A manager has electronically signed them. The employee has then presented a hard copy, and this manager has just ticked this box to say the hard copy is signed. Now there's a complete audit trail here, which I'm going to click on and bring up an audit trail. I think I've got a screenshot of this somewhere, but it's nice to see it live. So you can see the dates and times that any particular person actually clicked it and who clicked it. What you've also got is receipts, which is pretty cool. So I can see the receipts here for where I had to have receipts. These are actually just pictures that we uploaded. Obviously, you'd normally have receipts here. You wouldn't have a picture of a Worcester boiler. I have no idea where that receipt came from, but that must have been just a ready picture or scan that whoever was doing this testing had at the time. So those are the receipts, the audit report, and obviously you can click to mail the claimant to say, hey, why have you, we can approve these, but you need to just reduce we don't have a receipt for this, or you need to approve your something or other, or we can't read the receipt would be a normal mailing thing to send in. You can then create a hard copy of the expenses if you need a hard copy for your files. This would be an internal hard copy for somebody to physically sign all of the receipts. But normally you would get the hard copy in the post from the employee, and that would be the piece of paper that you were working with. You can obviously submit those expenses. So you can, if you've ticked that box, you can hit submit. I'm going to leave that there because it's a nice stage to have a report at. So that's the expenses approval process, and obviously the various different stages they're at, you would pick them up and you would work with them at those stages. You can see where they are, what has to happen next. Let's go and have a look at how we actually approve them and what the employee sees. So the first view I have is in Crowthorne on the 27th. I have actually allowed this chap here that's doing the dog and duck, I have allowed him in his expenses categories £10 and £10. The net result of that, and you'll remember it's always quite good fun when I try to bring the phone up, is that on the app, when he goes to expenses, and guess what, the app has gone over here. It's always fun chasing around the things for you. So he logs in and it says, do you want to view your current events, or would you like to update, send us a new picture of yourself or update you, whatever. So I'm going to say view my current events. Now I've confirmed a few of these. You may remember in the previous demo I hadn't confirmed, but the idea is this person should have confirmed that he's going to, and he has done that now. The idea is that in pay details, if he has any expenses, if some of these are 10, this will show up. If he doesn't, this won't show up, because otherwise, if you look at the combinations of different types of expense maxima you could have, it would take a year to work it out. So we've got a piece of software that we wrote to make sure that it's optimized so you only see expenses where you're allowed to claim them. Right now, he's got some approved expenses, and if he goes to his timesheets, it looks like here he's allowed to fill out expenses on this timesheet, but not these. And I can change that for you. If I just go here and I go to another event and I say on this event, I want to be able to allow him £5. Let's say in there, 5 and 5. Let's say 20, 33. Let's be generous. It's not coming out of my pocket. So now, if I refresh this expenses and timesheets, go to his timesheets again. If I save that, then it should allow expenses there. Why hasn't it let update maximum expenses? That is the 28th of the 9th. We need to see if we can refresh that. Might need to refresh it. Timesheets certainly should pop up. Nope, maybe I need to come out and go back in again. Normally these things would be set beforehand. So if I just go to, where are I now? Log out, log in again. Let's see if it refreshes that way. View my current events, timesheets, pay details, timesheets. Nope, it's not come up. Clearly I need to diddle around and make that update maximum allowances, subsistence. Not sure why that's not come up. Anyway, if we look at this one here, which I did literally 10 minutes before the show started, that is always the fun of demos. Then I can ask for what car he's using if I have to. This is another example of a non-claimable expense. In some jurisdictions, you have to put in information about your car, start mileage, finish mileage. I may as well just put in something that makes sense. So RG, let's put in a postcode. That should do. Start mileage is, let's say 100, and the end mileage is 200. He's not allowed to claim that, of course. Journey details, went to pub. Subs, in that particular one, I put subs as 10. So if I say 11, then it's not going to allow me to do that. Nevertheless, I can get a receipt and I can take a picture. So let me just pop that there. So if I click here to up, so I basically put in some, this is a bus, what am I saying? Mileage. No, I wouldn't have a receipt for mileage, but nevertheless, I know that's travel, isn't it? So I put some words in here, whatever what that is. Click here to upload a file. And once again, I'm taking a picture of this receipt here. There we go. Let's just take a picture of some piece of paper. There we go. Soft skills training for Accelerate. Click. Lovely job. And okay, I'm going to upload that. There we go. So there's my receipt. And off it goes. And we upload it. So that's my bus ticket on my lap on the way back from whatever the gig was that I went to. And we should be good to go. So now if I go back into the head office and look at where I'm just going to check one more time why that didn't come up. 33.5, yes, it's all saved. Doubtless it'll come up in the next demo. So now if I go back to the office and I look at timesheets and expenses, there should be somewhere around here a new submission. Oh no, I haven't submitted it yet. I've only saved it, of course. So just to run through the difference between a save and a submit. On the phone here, I've now got this, and I basically need to, so there's my uploaded files, and I basically need to click here to upload it. I've got my description and so on. Close that up. I don't think, let me see, parking tolls, I might as well put in 5 here. I think that was under the amount I was allowed. Other, click here to update expenses. Right. So it says the £11 exceeds. So I click OK. You may remember I only allowed 10 on this particular one. So 10 should be OK. And then I hit save. Please upload your receipt for the parking toll expenses. Okay, I think just to make it easy, I'm just going to not have a parking toll. Otherwise, I'm going to be back showing you how to take a photo. There we go. Notice the other things are grayed out because they're not allowed. So this one here should fit under the 27th. This is for, so that should fit under that 10 and that 10. So I was allowed to claim £5 for parking or £10 for tolls, but I didn't have a receipt, and I should have had a receipt when I crossed the bridge to Wales or whatever it was. No, you don't have to pay for that anymore. I'm showing my age. So there we go. We now have all of our expenses in there, updated. But remember, those are expenses which have not been claimed yet, they've just been saved. So if I go back to expenses, I've now got some expense items, and I can decide whether or not to claim those. So I can now find all my expense items, and they would be listed here. See, there's a claim already here that's been actually approved, but I can now click here and create. Are you sure the expenses are correct? Once you click OK, you can't go back. So there we go. That's now next expenses submission number 16. So if I go over here, I should be able to find number 16, managed expenses. You can see number 16 here. There's Johnny Tester. If I look at his receipts, I can see his receipts here. Now, he didn't have to have a receipt for those because he's not claiming them, but I can see the receipt, and I can write to him and say it's not very clear, or it doesn't look like a receipt for a bus, or whatever it was. What is it? Subs? Doesn't look like a receipt for sandwiches to me, mate. And you can see how all of that works. So that's a kind of a 360-degree view. So we've gone through the 6 stages. We've looked at why those red items would change. Obviously, they've got the opportunity to upload them. They've got the opportunity to check before they make a submission. They can batch loads of expenses items for different days and different events into one according to your rules. You can decide which categories show on the portal and which categories are claimable and which categories need receipts. You can completely control the submission workflow. Many people also have, I'm just remembering loads and loads of changes and mods and things we've done over the years. Loads of people also have a workflow where they want to get their expenses in and claimed because they're going to charge the customer. So they want all their expenses in by, let's say, the 15th of the month following it, because it goes in the payroll cycle and the invoice cycling for their customer. So they have a trigger which goes out on the 5th of the month and says basically use it or lose it. If you don't claim your expenses within the next 3 days, we're not going to accept them, and that's part of your job contract, and so on and so forth. Some people have 2 triggers because they don't want their staff not to claim it. It's no skin off their nose. What they really want is not to have late expenses, which is a problem for them to claim against their customers. So you can have trigger emails to go out there. Not only can you claim by shift, I did actually forget to mention, you can put in a default overall, you can claim by shift, you can also claim by event. So you can say for the whole of this event, I didn't do it on this one, but I did it on the New Blue Shoes event. For the whole of the New Blue Shoes event, every single shift, I've said at the event level, I can go into other actions, expenses, and I can say right at the event level, anybody on the New Blue shift. Why is this taking a while to come back? Come along, come along. Staff expenses, sorry, expenses categories. I'll explain that in a moment. Press the wrong button. Right. So in here, you've got certain maxima that you have allowed somebody to claim up to for any shift. Anybody, now it happens they're all in Reading, but anybody on any shift can claim those. Likewise, you can go to a particular member of staff and say that particular member of staff is allowed to claim these expenses, but other members of staff are not. So you might have a team leader at an event where you allow them to pay for expenses because they have to pay for the milk and tea and the parking for everybody or something, but other people can't. Or it may be that you only give the person who has offered to take the team in their car to charge for petrol, but nobody else can. There's all sorts of reasons why you'd want to have just one person claiming. It might be just part of their deal. They might be a more experienced member of field staff that you want to keep or something. This other one that I picked, staff expenses, there are many people who at the campaign or contract or at the event level will be in charge of signing off expenses and maybe in charge of the profit and loss for that campaign. So this staff expenses here, this is all of the staff expenses for that event, and it's exactly the same as this here, but this is all of the expenses in your company, managers, everybody, all of this here. This is any event for any person, but the other one was just for the New Blue Shoes event. So you can change it by shift, location, by event, by employee, And of course, you can put it on globally if you wish, but nobody does. Most people want to control it. You can decide if receipts are required, and you can check the receipts. And you can also, as a member of staff, you can save items and you can submit them later. So finance can skip stages at their discretion. So a finance admin has the power to just say, right, I've seen those submitted. We're not claiming back VAT. We don't need the receipts. I trust the person. Pay. They can skip right the way through, and that'll go in the audit log. That that person would obviously have to have the trust of the board and be able to do that. Remember, you have to build your template hard copy of if you want to use hard copies because you're claiming that or for whatever reason. There's an audit trail, and I clicked to show you this top screenshot here when I had the screen in front of me. If I went to go and look for it again, just because it's on this slide, I'd probably get lost. Those are receipts you can see down there for reclaimable tax reports. And obviously there's a process which we quite often build for different customers in different jurisdictions, but there's basically a process where you can export all of the receipts items using Report Builder. The reclaimable tax exports, obviously, once you have all of this stuff here, because you've ticked that box when you created your expense categories to say whether they included tax or not and at what rate, a report can be produced which breaks out tax and which can help you to decide to check the claims that you're making on the VAT and to make sure that they're penny perfect with the reports in here. Now, obviously, they may not be penny perfect, but if somebody's lost a receipt, you'll know why that £5 and that £1 VAT at 20% is not penny perfect with the report. It's because that person's lost a receipt. So you'll have explanations, but it's a really good sanity check. So that's expenses. Tomorrow we're doing the last one, and that is going to be mass change. So the idea of being able to take a particular date and a site and then saying, now I want that to apply to 500 supermarkets across the nation. Date replication is where there are various different ways of saying, I'm doing this on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and I now want that to apply to 1,500 other weeks during the year, or you've done a month in September this year and you want to do the same campaign next year, or you did a spring event and the customer comes back and says, can you do the same thing in summer, and so on. So there's all sorts of date replications and the ways to bulk update the shifts. You can also change roles and times and rates, because as sure as eggs is eggs, the customer will come to you and say, here's a contract for 9 till 5 doing demos in stores, or 6 in the evening till, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the morning doing cleaning shifts. And then the next thing you know, they'll say, oh, goodness gracious, the shops are closing at 10 o'clock now. Can you change the shifts to 10:30 at night till 8 in the morning? So you'd want to be able to do that. The most common times that you would want to change rates are, for example, when a mini budget comes out and the minimum wage goes up, or some rule changes for minimum wages, or you just want to change rates anyways. The customers change the hours, so you need to change the day rate. So that's it for tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening.